everybody, as you are popping in, it is so great to see you. I am Jen Herman, and of course, as the exact moment that we start this, the trash truck is going to drive by my window. So hopefully, Zoom's usually pretty good about muting out that noise. But we're going to give everybody just a minute to kind of log in. We're here at the top of the hour, and we want to make sure that all of you get logged in, have audio working, all that good stuff. So we'll give that a minute as the trash truck literally drives by my window. And so if you've got copies of the slide deck that Elsie is sending out to you, by all means, if you have those, want to print them out and jot down some notes, you can absolutely do that. If you want to use your iPad or your computer or whatever to take some notes, I obviously encourage you to do that as well. And hey, if you want to take a photo of you listening to this webinar, by all means, take a photo, post it to Instagram, tag me at JENNS_trends. And I would love to see your photos of you, or videos even, of you listening to today's webinar. So on that note, let's go ahead and dive in now that hopefully everybody is logging on and getting all your connections in here with your audio and everything tuned in, got that volume up. We're going to be talking about how to use Instagram to build better client relationships as a realtor. Now, if you've listened to me for previous presentations, some of the information we're going to share today is a little bit reiterating of what we've done before, but we're going to talk about some of it differently and some other aspects of your strategy, focus specifically on building those client relationships. So that's our topic for today. If you are not familiar with me, I am your host, Jen Herman with Jen's Trends. I am a globally recognized Instagram expert. I travel the world speaking about Instagram marketing, and I've had the privilege of working within the real estate industry for a relatively long period of time now. It's been a number of years. I've spoken at NAR, I've spoken at CAR, I'll be there again this year. I've worked here with the Orange County Realtors for a number of years as well. And I've also worked with other organizations in the real estate industry all around the US. So I understand where you're coming from. I understand how you use Instagram and your social media for your brand to attract new clients, to get more leads for your listings, to get more people to your open houses, to close more sales. So we're going to talk about the value of relationships on Instagram today as part of that overall strategy. Now, again, if you've never heard me speak before, I do tend to talk a little bit fast. So as I was mentioning, if you've got those, pens and pencils handy to scribble down some notes, by all means, have those ready to go, or get those typing fingers stretched out. And then if you have any questions at any point during the presentation today, by all means, drop those in the chat, or you can even use the Q&A. We have that open. I will have time at the end to answer some of those questions for you. So I love the question part. That's my favorite part, honestly, is to answer your questions and make sure that you're getting the value out of this that you need and that makes a difference to you when you leave this session. So if you've got those questions at any point during the presentation, drop those in the chat or Q&A, and we'll come back and answer those at the end. And with that, let's dive into probably one of the biggest questions that we keep getting these days. What's happened to Instagram? If you've been using Instagram for more than a few years, you know what I'm talking about, right? Engagement is down for everyone. It's almost painful. And I know, and I'm here to tell you that you're not alone. Not that that makes it necessarily better, but it is down and it is different. There have been a lot of changes to the Instagram platform over the last number of years. So what's causing these changes? There's three major changes that have happened in the last 4 years that continue to have an impact. And if you've been using Instagram since pre-pandemic era, you're going to have noticed these significant changes. So one of the biggest changes was the pandemic. It completely changed consumer behavior and brand creation. And so what happened was, and you may have heard me talk about this before, but we had kind of a status quo pre-pandemic, right? We had this many people creating content, we had this many people consuming content. It was in flux a little bit, but it was pretty consistent. What happened during the pandemic was everybody went home. So consumption went up. We were all sitting at home, we were on our phones, we were on our computers, we consumed more content. And as a result, of the pandemic, the brands were like, oh my gosh, no one's coming in the store. We can't talk to our people. So we're going to post more content. So brands started creating more content. More people started creating more content. We were consuming it because we had nothing else to do. And then as the pandemic started to, kind of wane, it started to go back to normal. All of those consumers went back to pre-pandemic lifestyles. They went back to work, they went back to school, they went back to, busy lives and other things, and their consumption went down. But the creation didn't go down. Brands are still creating just as much content now as they were during the pandemic. We got used to that. And consumption went back, maybe not quite to pre-pandemic levels, but it went down. And so now we have this new disparity. We have a new normal. It's not bad. It's not good. It just is what it is. And we have to understand that and appreciate that to understand really the differences that have happened through the not last number of years. Now, in addition to that, is platform saturation. Instagram has over 2 billion, with a B, monthly active users. 2 billion people actively on the platform every month. That's a lot of people. So that's a lot of people to compete with. And of course, there have been changes to the platform as well, with things related to suggested posts and reels and things that have changed the way we consume content in the feed, as well as in the reels feed and stories. We get a lot more suggested content. And so it's created platform saturation, right? There's more people, there's more content, there's more suggested content, which means when you log on to Instagram and you want to go see, 3-4 minutes of scrolling, you're not seeing 3-4 minutes of just the people you follow. You're seeing all those suggested posts, and you're probably trying to mix in some ads that, the meta's trying to show you, and the people. So you may only be seeing, 8, 9, 10 people that you follow, whereas 3-4 years ago, you probably would have seen 20, 30, 40 people in that same scrolling period of time. So that saturation on the platform has changed what we see and how much we see. And there are ways to control that, but most people aren't going to control that. So we need to learn to work within that ecosystem. And then the third big change that we've had is Reels. Reels launched 4 years ago, around the same time as the pandemic era started. That was when Reels came around. And that changed the platform. So now we went from having one feed and stories to having a feed that also include Reels, but now we have a Reels tab. You can go into a whole different tab and see just Reels. So if you get into the Reels tab, you're not seeing feed content, you're not seeing carousels and static posts. So you may not get people seeing your content if they get sucked into the Reels tab. But then you go, well, then great, let's just do all Reels. No, that is not the answer. But yes, you do want to make sure you're creating Reels, and we are going to talk about that a little bit today. So these are the 3 big things that have impacted the performance on the platform that I want you to be aware of, because it helps you kind of, think about how you're creating your content, how you're going to connect with your audience, but Instagram is still one of the best platforms to build relationships with your customers. I was having this conversation on a podcast very recently about why I fell in love with Instagram, 11 years ago. And it was because it was such a community building tool. It was amazing. Like, you could comment on someone's post and like 5 minutes later you were besties, it was just such a community driven platform. And it still is. It's not obviously the same as it was 9, 10, 11 years ago, but it's still one of the best platforms to build relationships with people and with your customers. And that's what we want to talk about today. Because relationships do matter, obviously. Relationships matter. You know this. You're a realtor. You deal with people every day. You know how important those relationships are. It's, from everything that you're doing with networking and word of mouth and your marketing and, just being out on the weekends and connecting with people, friends and family and family of kids that you go to school with your kids and all these things. Relationships obviously matter. In real estate, relationships are one of the most paramount foundations for your success. And so it is important that we focus on that. And that's why we want to talk about that today, as it relates to Instagram. And people connect with people that they want to work with and people that they trust. And Instagram is one of those platforms that's really going to give you the power to create that world of expertise and knowledge and relatability and trust. So we want to make sure that you're thinking about that when you're creating your Instagram content as a way to connect with people that go, yes, I know you, I like you, I trust you. I may have never met you, but I know I want to work with you. And that's what we want to get you to achieve. So building relationships and those personal connections on Instagram will keep your content higher in the feed of your followers. Now, this is an algorithmic component, and we're going to talk about that a couple times today, but it is important that you understand when you have a personal relationship, and when we say personal relationship on Instagram, that means that you've had direct communication. It usually means in something like DMs. It doesn't have to go down in the DMs for a personal relationship, but when you have regular conversation back and forth on your posts and your DMs and stories and that sort of thing with another individual, Instagram gives your content preferential placement in that person's feed. So having those relationships actually helps your content reach the right people, not just because you're giving them the content they want, but algorithmically, it gives you a benefit as well. And then, of course, maintaining those conversations, maintaining those relationships keeps you top of mind because people might not be ready to buy today, right? They may not be ready to sell today. It may be a year, 2 years, 3 years before they're ready to actually move to that next step of whether it's buying or selling or both. But maintaining these relationships and having those conversations over time on social media, and especially on Instagram, keeps you top of mind so that when that day comes and they're ready to buy or sell, you are the person that they are turning to. So that is really what we want to focus on for the value behind everything we're going to share today. Now, there's four key types of content we're going to talk about today, specifically as it relates to building relationships. Of course, there is way more to Instagram than this. And if you've been to my previous sessions here with Orange County Realtors, you know we've talked about other components. But today we're going to talk about creating personal posts on Instagram. We're going to talk about Reels, obviously. We'll talk about stories, and then we're going to talk about direct messages. So before we dive into each of those, I want you to think about these aspects of your relationship building content. This is generalized across all aspects of Instagram. We want to make sure that you are providing value add content, things that give value to the recipient. It is not a me environment, right? It's not just about what properties you have available. It's not just about the listings. It's not just about the open houses. It's not just about you. That's very one-sided, right? Like, would you ever go to a networking event and literally just talk about all the properties you have available and not ever say, hey, how are you doing? Elsie and I were talking about the summer weather in the green room before we launched today. Like, you have conversation, you have dialogue, it's a back and forth, and then you start talking about, oh yeah, actually I've got a couple listings, Then you go into that. But you have to make this a conversation. You have to provide a two-way dialogue. And one of the best ways to do that is to give something of value, right? You give before you ask. So providing those value adds, whether it's resources, referrals, tips, and tutorials, that's going to help you foster those relationships because you are giving something to them, not just always asking. We want to make sure you're sharing personal content about you and your family. Working with a realtor is a very personal choice, right? This is somebody who has to come into every aspect of your life as the buyer or the seller, all your financials, every aspect of this process is very in-depth, very intimate relationship. So you want to pick somebody that you relate to. You want to pick somebody who's going to make you feel like, that you trust them to do the job. And so we want you as the realtor to have that in spades. And by sharing your personal content about you and your family, it makes you relatable. It makes you fun. It makes you exciting. It makes you somebody that they want to work with. So we want to make sure you're including that content. Also, create opportunities for comment and direct message conversations. We want to make sure that you are creating content on all aspects from stories, feed, and reels for people to leave comments on those posts. We want to be encouraging those comments and responses. That helps with relationships and dialogue. And even more importantly, direct messages. And we are going to talk about some of those strategies coming up. Make sure that you're including yourself, you how you look today, you how you look tomorrow, you how you look on the weekend. We want to make sure we see you in your content. And when I say that, that is not taking your profile headshot, cropping out the background and just sticking your headshot as an overlay on every single photo. That is not putting you in your content. And let's face it, that headshot probably doesn't look like you 90% of the time, if at all, right? We want to make sure that we're showcasing you no matter what you look like. People are going to recognize you from your social media. When they show up to that open house, they're going to recognize you from your social media. Imagine they walk into the open house and they're like, oh, where's Susie? I don't see her. And you're standing right there because they've never seen your face, or you look nothing there like you do in your profile photo, right? We want to make sure that they know who you are. Trust me, I do not always show up in makeup and hair, freshly washed and everything. I do my Sunday live show half the time with no makeup and literally in a t-shirt and a hoodie, because that's how I show up on Sunday mornings. And that's okay. The value you're giving, the reality behind you, is 10 times more important than what you think you look like when you show up. Even in real estate, where there's this expectation that you're going to look a certain way, let's start breaking some of those norms and show up as yourself. In that light, share your perspectives, your passions, your lifestyle, your personality. We want to see all of those aspects come through in your content. If you have perspectives on things that are happening in the industry, if you think things are going one way when everyone says something else, share that opinion. If you have passions that you do, are you a skydiver? Are you a marathon runner? Are you a deep sea diver? Like, what do you do? What are your passions? What lights you up as hobbies and interests? Share those things. People will connect with that. I always have a story of someone, I think she's actually maybe retired now, but she's a real estate agent on the East Coast. And she had shared all this professional content for years. And she ended up she ran marathons. Everyone knew she, ran marathons, but no one on her social media did. And when she posted that she ran a marathon, she literally landed 3 new clients within that week of people being like, I never knew you were a marathon runner. I am too. Oh my gosh, this is so great. Guess what? I'm getting ready to sell my house. Like, it's kind of that's a bit of an extreme, like, lucky, great example, but it's true. She posted about being in a marathon and got clients because of it, because people want to connect with like-minded people. So share those passions, those lifestyles, things that light you up, things that you do, your kids, your family, your holidays, your activities, your dinner, whatever it is, to whatever level of publicity you want to share that. We want to make sure that you are putting that out there. So your content should include things like those tips and tutorials on home design, decor, seasonal trends. Give that value add content. Talk about things like local news, updates, and activities to your local community. You are in that community that you serve, or you serve a certain community. Share that information. Are there things going on for weekend events? Are there family activities going on? What is happening that you can share and give that value? Do the education and information. Those local resources and referrals. Do you have a great handyman? Do you have a great landscaper? Do you have a great home stager? Share them. People need these resources. I'm in a Facebook moms group down here in San Diego, and I literally don't know how many times a week we get the same, does anyone have any referrals for? And it's a seamstress, it's they're looking for a doctor referral, they're looking for babysitters, they're looking for pet sitters, they're looking for someone to fix a leak, they're looking for a handyman. Literally every week, dozens of these requests. So be that resource for your audience and share those local referrals. And then, of course, the behind the scenes in your personal life. These are just a few examples of what some of those things look like. This first example here with the kids, that's from Melissa Sophia. She's a real estate agent down here in San Diego, and this is her. It's a reel she created showcasing a little vacation moment, and those are her kids. And, she puts this out there on social media. Does it help her sell a house in that moment? No. But she's created an amazing community. She's at Mel Knows. And I think is it Mel Knows or Mel Knows Real Estate? Mel Knows. You can see up there at the top of the screenshot. And she has a great way of building community and showcasing what's going on in her personal life on her social media. You have this example in the middle, which is, what is cap rate? It's very educational. Again, resource, information, education, give, give, give. And similarly, this one over here from Michelle is talking about things to do to improve around your house. So it's more of a, it's more of a tip, it's more of an information, but it could also go into referrals and say, hey, here's some people to work with locally. So keep these things in mind across the board when you're creating your content. Hold on, I gotta click again. There we go. All right, so let's dive into feed posts specifically. So we're going to talk about this, and we talked about this being, it should be more personal posts. There's a lot of things you can do with your feed content, but I want to talk about making it a little bit more personal to start with. So things that you can do to build those relationships. We want that when people come to your grid, when they see your content in their feed, we need that to look like how you show up in real life. If you show up in real life wearing sneakers, jeans, and hoodies, do not show up on social media in a pinstripe suit. They don't align, right? Like who you are at home, who you are at work, who you are at the open houses, who you are at client meetings should be what you look like on social media. And that doesn't have to be a pigeonholed, very specific thing. You can do everything from, the pencil skirts and the high heels down to the flip-flops and yoga pants. That's okay. We're allowed to have more than one style, but we want to make sure that what you are showing up as on your Instagram account is how you show up in real life. If you're the super chill, laid back surfer, like you're down there at the beach every day and that's your life, don't try to come in sounding all super legalese and super corporate stuffy on your social media. They don't align. Next, we want to make sure you're focusing on things like brand colors, vibe, style, and personality that stay consistent. If your individual brand colors are black and yellow, don't be posting a whole bunch of content that's got pinks and greens and if your style is light and airy, don't be posting a bunch of content that's really dark and harsh and deep contrast and deep saturation, right? We want to make sure that everything is similar. That goes down from, what does your website look like? What do your business cards look like? What does your content look like? What do you look like when you show up? What does your car look like? What is your brand? What is your style, your vibe? All of that ties in, and we want to make sure that your content visually and in your captions is all staying similar. Your photo should catch attention, then the caption should provide context. We do not want a ton of text up in your photos. Videos can be a little bit different, and we're going to talk about some real strategies, but in your photos, maybe a couple of words. A couple of words can be great for getting people's attention, but we don't want a ton of text in those images. All of that should go down in the caption. And then make sure that you're editing your photos to stay consistent. Again, if you are using certain color palettes, make sure that you're editing similarly, right? Like if I'm going to use a filter, I always use Paris. That is my favorite filter, hands down, across the board, from stories to reels to feed posts. I'm all about the Paris filter. That's my vibe. It's a slightly cooler tone. It adds a little bit of a blue tone to it. It's a very softening, like it kind of, ladies, it makes us look a couple of years younger, but it's a great filter for me and my brand. It represents me really well. It's definitely my favorite filter. You may look at it and be like, no, I don't like that filter. I really like this one. Great, go use that one. But we want to use the same 1 to 2 filters consistently. We want to make sure that our content consistently has a similar style and vibe to it, and filters will help you get there. If you've got a photo that's very dark, do some editing to lighten it up, to, reduce the shadows, maybe reduce the contrast, and bring it to a lighter perspective that's more on brand with your other content, so that you don't have this massive disparity in how people are consuming your content. We want to make sure that people can feel, again, this is trust. This is comfort, right? This is knowing that every time you show up, you're going to show up the same way. It makes them feel like they can trust you more when you have consistent content. So here's a couple examples to look at for how to incorporate this kind of personal component into non-personal content. So this is an example here from Andrew Lin, and he spent some time up in Sacramento in a kind of more of a political environment, talking about things related to home ownership, about removing the barriers for those, taxes, about diversity and equity and all these sorts of things. This is what he talked about. And he's telling you, like, look, during my time up there, this is what we talked about. And he goes, I'm passionate about fighting for private property rights and creating opportunities. So he's putting his personal spin on it, even though this is a business post, right? It starts to bring in his personal passions, his personality, his motivation. And this is a great way to showcase things that you are passionate about, even if you're not maybe at this level of going up and meeting with people, in Sacramento, but anything that you have to share why you feel a certain way or something that you're passionate about, especially in the industry, or how it serves your clients, these are great things to share. This is another example from Morgan King. She's a real estate agent down here in San Diego. But so this is an example, her and her husband, couple glasses of wine out here. That's probably Mission Bay down here in San Diego, ocean in the background. But then the post is talking about things to do in San Diego. She's talking specifically about like Food Fest and the Greek Festival. So it's more of like a local resource, right? Things that are going on locally that you can check out, that you can look into. But she's adding it with her personal photo. So you're seeing her, again, messy hair, the wind is blowing. Like it's not a perfect photo, but it's a relatable, happy photo. You see happy smiling faces. This is a good Instagram photo. So these are the types of things that we want to find ways to include your personal component with the additional, information, education, those sorts of things. And don't be afraid to use emojis to showcase your personality. Morgan does this really well, including some emojis. Use photos that showcase other aspects of what you're trying to showcase. If this is her at one of those events, that would be a great way to showcase that, but it doesn't have to be, right? So you can just find photos that work in alignment with the message you're trying to share. All right, so when you're looking at your captions for your Instagram content, first and foremost, have a caption. I think we're beyond the days when people didn't post captions, but make sure you have a caption and be descriptive. We also want to make sure that the first sentence is the most powerful. When people log on to Instagram and they're scrolling through the feed, they see your username and the rest of that line of text, and then a second line of text before they see ... more. So they're not even seeing maybe the whole first sentence, right? They're only seeing those first two lines of text. If those first two lines of text do not inspire them to want to click ... more, they're never reading that caption that you put all that time and effort into. So make sure that first sentence is powerful. Add emojis, use capital letters, make bold statements, ask a question, do something that gets people to say, yes, I want to read the rest of that caption. Entertaining, educational, informative, valuable, in whatever capacity those look like. Make sure that you're thinking about that as you're writing that caption. If it's meant to be entertaining, keep it lighthearted. Is it meant to be educational? Great. What are you going to put in there to educate? All that sort of stuff we want to think about. In general, not too short, not too long. I typically say 1 to 3 short paragraphs is the ideal length. Now, I am the queen of maxing out 2,200 characters. I do this regularly. I actually had a post, I think it was last weekend's post, I talked about my daughter doing a baseball camp, and I literally had probably like 4,000 characters. I wrote it in a note, and I had to keep editing and editing and editing and editing and cutting and cutting and cutting and cutting to get it to the 2,200 character limit for Instagram. Not ideal for most, but when you start to build up an audience that wants that educational content in that way, or wants that personal content in that way, going longer is okay. But for most content, 1 to 3 short paragraphs is going to be ideal. Like I already said, the photo, the video is meant to grab the attention, and then the context of the caption is meant to take the story that much further. And again, stay true to your brand voice, using the lingo, the emojis, and everything based on everything we've talked about, making sure that you are using those captions to connect, create a relationship, invite the conversation with that audience. All right, so let's talk a little bit about carousel posts, because these are an extension of the feed, right? These are where you get more than one slide in a post. So you can, right now it's technically up to 10. Instagram has been testing more. Some people get 15, some people get 20. Some of us are still limited to 10, but in general, you can do up to 10 photos and or videos in a carousel. So when you log on and you scroll down, you can swipe through left to right additional photos and videos in that sequence. Now, here's why carousels are so awesome, because A, if somebody sees your carousel and does not interact with it, they don't read the caption, they don't swipe through, they don't take any action on it, then the next time they come onto Instagram, they're going to see that post again with the second image in the sequence. So it's double the chance for exposure. So these are great for things like when we have listings or things like that. We want to make sure that people are seeing that content. We definitely want to make sure we're taking advantage of the carousels, but these are also incredibly powerful for the personal content. Here's another example from Mel Knows. And this was a great one. She said, the many versions of me that you can find within the span of 1 week. And so she's got all of these different things. She was at the White House. She was in Miami. She held her daughter's hand getting her ears pierced. She was at an airport. She was speaking in Washington, D.C. She was at Wonderfront Fest, which is a festival, a music festival down here in San Diego. She goes to a lot of music festivals, so she shows a lot of that content there. But she literally has a carousel showing a photo from each of these different things that she has done. And it really does allow her to showcase her diversity of interests and her passion and how actively involved she is in the industry and for all these different things that she's advocating for. So this is a great way to use carousels as well. If you really want to showcase who you are and what you do, there's some really fun ways to do that using these carousels. Now, again, don't overuse carousels. We don't want everything to be a carousel because it is content overload. Even if you only do 2 or 3 in a post, it can be a little overwhelming. So we don't want to overuse these. We want to save them and use the carousels strategically when they make the most sense. Other ways that we can use carousels for building their relationship is through, these are great resource type things or educational type things where you create a great custom cover slide. You do this in Canva or whatever other, tool you want to use. It doesn't have to be Canva, but that's one of the most common. And you create a standard template for what that first image is. So in this case, it's very, kind of bleached out, but there's it's feet with the pink flip-flops over the side of a pink car. But then she has fun family day trips you can take this summer. And so then you swipe through and it's all these examples of things that you can do. And a lot of these are images of her and her family, right? So she's giving you educational content, local resource education, local things you can do, local day trips that you can do from, within the, Orange County, LA area. But then they're all personal photos of her and her family doing these activities. So it builds that level of interest. You get to see a little bit more about her, the things that they do, but then also provide some value through creative content. So look for some fun ways to incorporate these sorts of things into your content as well. All right, so let's talk strategies for Reels, because we can't do a presentation anymore without talking about Reels. They've kind of taken over. Why? Well, Reels. According to Instagram, at a recent event, this was just like a month or 2 ago, they were at an event over in Europe, and they announced, this has not been publicly documented with data. I can't back this up with stats, but according to Instagram and personnel from Instagram at this conference, they said that 50% of all time on Instagram is spent on Reels. So this goes 2 ways. One, yay, if you create Reels, great. 50% of everyone's time on Instagram is spent on Reels. But that's 50% of all time, right? So we're not going to do all Reels all the time because 50% of time on Instagram is spent on the feed, stories, and things like that, right? So it's not like we're going to go all in on Reels. They're not going to become our exclusive content source. But yes, they matter. They're clearly a major component of the platform now, and we have to factor that in. Reels are also incredibly powerful for reaching more new people. You will typically reach more non-followers with Reels than you will with other content. And that's because of the way the suggested posts work. It's the way the algorithm works, whether you're in the feed or you're in the Reels feed. People tend to get more suggested content around Reels than around feed posts. So if you're creating those Reels that get that distribution, those are going to help you reach more new people. Now, quick fun fact on that, typically for those recommendations, for those suggested posts, you're not going to see reels over 30 seconds. So you want to factor that into your strategy when you're creating these reels. Under 30 seconds are best for reaching new audiences. Over 30 seconds, you're reaching your existing audience. Doesn't mean you won't reach new people with the longer videos. You absolutely will, but not to the same level. So we want to make sure that you are factoring that in. Under 30 seconds, meant for reach and distribution, especially to new audiences. Over 30 seconds, you're serving your existing audience. In general, reels are more for awareness and relatability. They're less for conversions. Most people do not get a lot of conversions off of reels. Doesn't mean you can't. It's just not as frequent. It's not as common. So we really want to be using the reels for the personal side, right? Sharing your, behind the scenes, your weekend activities, highlights of your vacation or recent travels. You can use these obviously as well for, your listings, news, like information updates, obviously all those things as well. But we want to keep these for more of the awareness and that educational side of it, more so than, hey, here's a listing, come look at the house, right? We want to use these more for that kind of broad top of funnel. And focus on what your audience wants. If your audience wants puppies, let's give them puppies. If your audience wants entertainment, if they want videos of you lip syncing and that's what's getting a ton of conversions, if that's what's getting a ton of comments, if that's what's getting a ton of DMs, do more lip syncing videos. Trust me, I am not a fan of it, but hey, if it works, do it. If jumping on a trending audio works for your brand, do it. If that's going to work, we need to do more of what works, even if it's not necessarily what we love. And I say that as somebody who actually really despises reels. I hate reels. I really do. I don't like them. I don't like making them. I don't like consuming them. I don't like creating content around them. But go look at my Instagram account and there's a lot of reels. Why? Because it's what works. It's what gets in front of my audience. It's what gets in front of new people. So we have to do the reels. And we want to make sure we're focusing on what that target audience wants. Now, in terms of the relationship side of it, using these reels, these are both examples related to education. So we have Brian up here sharing the 3 things you must do before you sell. And then you have Latrice down here talking about fireproofing. So both of these are educational, but I love them because they show their personality. They let their personality shine. Like Latrice, oh my gosh, she comes in hot, like legit. She comes in, she talks fast like I do. She's kind of like already the podcast on, on 3-speed. But she's, you can feel her personality come through in this video. Same thing with Brian. You get his personality style and you're like, oh, okay, like I totally have a vibe for who you are and how you communicate and what you know. Like, so it builds that trust, it builds that relatability, even though they're giving educational content. It's also giving educational, right? You're giving that value add, you're give. So you're giving something that's going to make them want to stick around more often. I mentioned the lip syncing. You don't have to lip sync and you don't have to dance. I've never danced in an Instagram reel or a TikTok video. I don't plan to. I'm not going to say never, but I don't plan to because it's just not me. It's not what I want to do. It's not on brand for me. It doesn't work. You don't have to do those things if that's not your personality. That's the whole thing here, right? We want to showcase your personality. If your personality is sitting on the back patio with a glass of wine on Friday night, then do your reel sitting on the back patio with a glass of wine. You do you. Whatever works for you, and that also connects with your audience. Again, creating the educational content, not just entertainment. These 2 examples are great examples of that. Always make sure you're getting right to the point in the first frame. We need to make sure that you are coming in hot. Latrice does this so well in this one. This isn't one of those, hi, I'm Jen Herman, and I am a local real estate agent here in Orange County. That doesn't convert, right? The moment you got to, hi, I'm, boom, they're gone. But instead, you come in and say, have you thought about fireproofing your house? Fire season quickly approaching. Hey, I'm Latrice, da-da-da-da-da. Like if you come in and tell them exactly what they're going to get, then you can do a quick little intro as to who you are and continue the video. We want to make sure that you're giving the value add right up front to keep that retention in the videos. Make sure you had a title with a text box. Brian did this here. So he comes on camera, he starts talking and he's got the 3 things you must do before you sell. And then that goes away. And then it goes into the rest of the video. But that allows people to know right off the bat what the video is. Even if you're kind of taking a half a second too long to get to, what the topic of the video is, that tells them what it is. It's going to increase your retention on your videos and ensure that the right people are watching the right videos. Similarly, create a custom cover image. This is what's going to live on in your Reels tab on your profile. And if all the photos, or if the cover photos of each of those Reels is just your face, I don't know what any of those are about. I don't know which one I want to listen to. So if you put the titles on custom cover images that allow it to show, your face, it can be literally like when I shoot a video, I will literally take photos right here, sitting here, I take photos and then I film the video. So then I take the photos, I put the text over it, that's my custom cover image. So it looks exactly like I do in the video, but I've put the text, you can put your branding to it, colors, logos, any of those sorts of things that allow you to bring it all together. And so when someone comes to your Reels grid, they can actually figure out which videos they want to watch. And ultimately, I want to make sure you're using the same hashtag strategy as you are for feed posts. So we didn't talk about hashtags because only so many minutes in this webinar. But if you scan that QR code, that will take you to a YouTube video that explains my hashtag strategy. That YouTube video is more than a few years old, but I promise you it's still the same strategy that works today. And it's still the same hashtag strategy that I teach. So make sure that you check that out. And then if you do want more information on hashtags, let me know. I can share with you a link. I have an ebook. I think it's like $9 for the ebook on all things hashtags. So if you really want that, let me know after the webinar and I can share that information with you. But make sure you are using hashtags. Absolutely critical that you are using hashtags, especially on your Reels. They're going to help with distribution and reach. You do not want to ignore hashtags. So make sure that you are using those. All right, so another resource here for you. This is a free guide that will give you 12 Reels ideas. So if you've never done a webinar with me before and you haven't seen this, by all means, scan that QR code. That's going to be a double opt-in. So you're going to have to say yes, and then you're going to get an email and you're going to have to say yes, and then we can send you the guide. But it is a free PDF that will walk you through 12 different Reels ideas, not specifically for the real estate industry, but it'll give you some ideas to think about in creating those Reels. And some of them will help with that relationship building component for you as well. All right, so we're going to dive into Instagram stories really quick. So why do Instagram stories matter? Well, there's over 500 million. So of those 2 billion every month, there's over 500 million every day active on stories. A lot of people are in there consuming those stories, and we want to make sure that you have the chance to get in front of those audiences. More than 70% of Instagram users are watching stories regularly. More than 70%. That's a lot of those 2 billion monthly active users that are in stories every single day. And then ultimately, people connect more with brands and businesses and stories than anywhere else on Instagram. Stories are the highest converting content in general. I say in general because I'm the exception to every rule, and stories just don't work for me. They are not conversions for me. But for the average person, for most brands, stories are the highest converting content. It's where you're going to get the link clicks from the link sticker. It's where you're going to get the conversations. It's where you're going to get people showing up and saying, yes, I want to know more. It is a great way to connect with your audience and drive conversions ultimately, but it's also one of the best ways to build the relationships. And the reason why is because we usually don't care when it comes to our stories, right? Our grid lives on forever. Oh my God, that photo from like 2016 is still there, right? But your stories disappear after 24 hours. They're gone. So we show up with no makeup. We show up with bad lighting. We show up with messy hair. We show up sweaty after the gym. We don't care because it's going to disappear in 24 hours. But as a result, that is your most relatable content. That is where people actually get to know who you are. And that's what makes them want to work with you. So stories are incredibly powerful for building those relationships. When you're creating your stories, shorter is better. Keep them under 20 to 30 seconds. If they're longer than that, just make it a reel, because now stories can actually be a full minute. If it's going to be a minute, just make it a reel. In general, keep them a little bit shorter. Try to create at least one story a day. I realize that's sometimes asking a lot. You have a whole other thing, every single day, you have a whole business to run. You got kids, you got family, you got obligations, you got errands, you got a business, all the things are bombarding you. But try to create at least one story a day. Like we said, they expire after 24 hours. So if you post a story on Tuesday and I don't log in until Thursday, I'm never going to see your story. You can repeat stories. That's perfectly fine too. You can make that part of your strategy. But again, showing that behind the scenes, showing a day in the life. Here's me sitting in carpool lane. Well, here's me at the grocery store. They're relatable. Here's me doing laundry. Relatable. So it's easier to create story content than others, and it'll allow you to stay top of mind. Mix up the variety of type of stories, from text-based, which is where you use create, or you just have like a single photo and you put a whole bunch of text up there, text-based, or photos only, or videos. So you kind of have all those options. Don't only do videos, don't only do photos. Mix up the variety in those throughout your content to be able to, figure out what works best and be able to make sure you're optimizing for all those different audiences. Use GIFs and stickers for animation and drawing attention. When I say click here, I always put like the little click emoji, or I put tap here with like some sort of, GIF on it that's going like this, so that people will go, oh yeah, let me click on that. Let me tap on that. It draws attention to those things. Make sure you're sharing the behind the scenes, your day in the life, your candid moments, fun aspects, obviously your listings, team activities, your travels, all these things. So much can go into your Instagram stories, and ultimately keep it fun and relatable. You can still put educational content. You can still put listings and open house information, but where possible, try to keep the stories fun and relatable. I mentioned using some of the stickers. So we want to make sure that you're using stickers that generate more engagement. When somebody actively participates with your Instagram story, that's an algorithmic benefit. It also typically can open up, DMs and things like that. So using things like the poll and quiz and the question sticker, these are great ways to get audience feedback, to get insight into who your audience is, to be able to interact, provide education. These are great things to use. Add yours is a super fun one. You've probably seen these going around, but you can show something like you do a photo of you with your dog, and then you do add your sticker, and then it's like, add your photo with your dog, so everyone adds their photo. Or you at the beach, or like, are you at a convention? Are you at a local festival? You can have it add yours, sharing photos from the festival, those sorts of things. Countdown stickers are great for open houses. Put the countdown sticker for Saturday morning at 10 a.m. when the listing, or when the open house begins. People can set reminders to make sure they don't miss that open house. The slider is interactive. It's goofy, it's silly, but it works. And then there's the link sticker, which we all love. Make sure that you're taking advantage of that, whether that's sending people to your website, your YouTube channel, your listings, whatever it is. You can be creating that content with the link sticker to send them to any destination you want. And all of those are active engagement. Active engagement keeps your content higher in the stories algorithm, so people are more likely to see it. It's not just passive consumption. We want active engagement as well. So here's a couple examples. These two here from Kaylee. So this is one with the poll and one with the question. So the one on the left here, she's got the question sticker. Do you have specific real estate questions? Happy to answer them. Drop them here. So you can type in whatever question as an answer. Boom. Kaylee's going to get that question and she can answer you. These are great ways to build relationships, to build trust, because guess what? Once they do that and you respond, you're in a direct message having a private conversation. It's not public. That's a private conversation. This one here in the middle, she said, are all white kitchens dead? Yes, so boring. No, they're timeless. You can take the poll. When you choose the poll, you see the results to date. But you as the consumption, or you as the creator, sorry, you get those poll results, right? So this is a great way to find out, what is your audience, what is your local demographic looking for? Are they over the all white, or are they still for it? It's a little bit of super easy market research. And here's another example from Mel Knows. This is one where this is part of the ARIA family. So this is the Asian real estate organization down here in San Diego. They did a big, I think it's their annual event. They do, I think, quarterly ones as well, but they did a big beach day. So this is her posting about that, tagging people, that sort of thing, and putting that up in her stories. So again, showcasing more of that. It's work related, but the fun side of it and everything as well. All right, so let's talk about direct messages before we wrap up, because direct messages are super important. As I mentioned, these are critical. Instagram wants us in direct messages. This goes back to the days of like when Facebook was like, you need a Facebook group, and everyone created Facebook groups. Instagram's over here saying you need to use direct messages. So we're going to use direct messages. That's where they want us. They keep pushing it. We're going to have to take advantage of it. They're constantly adding more and more features and ways to connect in the direct messages, making it easier for you to do it. So we're going to take advantage of those. And the reason why is that direct messages indicate a personal relationship. So if I post something on my stories, if I post something on my feed, if I post a reel something and you send me a direct message at any point, whether it's in response to the story, saying you want the link to something, or just being like, oh my gosh, Jen, I can totally relate to that thing you posted, whatever that is, you send me a DM and I respond to you, we now have a personal relationship. That means my content shows up higher in your feed going forward. Eventually that will wane if you never engage with my content again. But Instagram goes, if you're having a direct message, there's a good chance you want to have more information from this person. So we want you opening up as many opportunities as possible for your audience, your clients, your potential customers to be sending you DMs to keep those personal relationships going. So take advantage of those direct messages to connect privately. Use them to get people in, algorithmically advantageous, but then have that opportunity to connect privately, to answer their questions, to talk about things that they don't want to talk about publicly, establish the relationship. Again, the banter, the back and forth, the relatability, answering questions they might have about the industry, about buying or selling or any of those sorts of things. You start to build that relationship in the direct messages, and then rely on the various calls to action. Again, whether it's feed posts, reels, as well as stories, find ways to get people into those DMs. So in this case, I had a story. I said, what Instagram question can I answer for you? Reply to the story with what you need to know. So people replied, opened up a direct message, said, hey, I'm really curious about, hey, I want to know X, Y, whatever it is. And then I can answer them. I can have that dialogue. A lot of times I was sending them to a video, maybe a reel or a post that already answered that question. But I'm giving them that resource and I'm having a personal conversation while building algorithmic preference and being able to have personal dialogue with that individual. So when it comes to using your direct messages, we want to use calls to action that get people into the DMs. So you can say things like comment link below and we'll send you the link. It could be, comment details below and we'll send you the listing details, or we'll send you the open house details. Maybe it's a video you have, maybe it's a blog post you have. Comment link below and we'll send you that link. They comment link, you reply to them with a DM. That opens up the direct message thread. You could conversely say, send us a DM and we'll send you the info. So I've used this conversely. It puts a little bit more onus on them to start the chat, to initiate the conversation, but it's less work on you to have to manage back and forth because then you have a DM and you can just respond. Things like reply to the story. I've got coupon code on here. You're not necessarily gonna have a coupon code for a listing, but you may have coupon codes related to other things that you've got going on, whether you're hosting local events, meetups, networking, things like that. And if they reply, they get to attend the networking party for free or the event for free. So you can have things like that. Or reply to this story and we'll send you the address. You don't want to post the address for the open house publicly, but we're happy to send it in DM. So find ways like that. Once you get that direct message, be responsive. You have to actually engage with them. So answer the questions that they're asking, provide the requested information, make sure that whatever it is that they're coming for, that you're engaging back with what they're looking for, and use that time to build the relationships and conversations. It doesn't mean going automatically into the sales process. It's not, they say, hey, can I get the listing, details for that property? And you go, great. Here's 5 other listings I have. When do you want to come look at them all, right? We're just going to be like, great, glad you're interested. Is there something specific about that property that you were most interested in? Or, open up the conversation before you just jump right into the heavy sale. And then wherever possible, personalize those responses with their name and use audio or video even. So when they send you a DM, it's going to show you their username, which is probably their name. And if not, you can go to their profile really quick and see if it has their name. So instead of just being like, great, here's the link, you can be like, hey, John, so glad you're interested. We'll see you on Sunday. Here's the information. Use their name. And then again, if possible, do audio recordings or video recordings. It lets them hear your voice. It further builds that relationship. It builds that trust factor. They get to see you. You can literally be like, I just left the gym. I'm sweating in my car, but I wanted to make sure you got this information. It shows you care. You're putting them first. It builds that trust factor. All right, what else? What else do you need to think about beyond all the things that we've just talked about? Well, some things to keep in mind. Instagram has always been a community building platform. That's what it has always been. It's not quite the same, but it's still there for community building. Make sure to keep that in mind and think about that when you're creating your content. How is this serving my community? How is this going to build relationships with my audience? Remember that people want to connect with you. I've talked about this a few times, but it's super, super important that you understand the value of you in your content. People want to work with you. And then you get to decide how personal you want to be. You can be as open book as you want. I tend to be very open book on my private Facebook account. I'm not as open book on my public Instagram account. That's my choice, right? Like some people are going to be way more public in sharing that. Some people aren't. You get to decide how personal you want to be, how publicly you want to share that information. Just make sure that you are including that personal content. And then remember that buying and selling a home is a very personal transaction. This is something people want. They care, they want the right person, they want somebody that they connect with, they want somebody who gets them. And you can do that by creating these relationships and trust. The key to the relationship and the trust is your expertise and your personality, because your sales window is actually very narrow. Even if it takes a year for that client to buy or sell our house, it's still a very narrow window in the grand scheme of time. But using social media, using Instagram, you can be fostering relationships every single day. So when that sales window is open, you are the person they want to work with. I want to thank you all so much for hanging out with me today. This has been lovely. I hope you've enjoyed all this content. I've got a QR code up here. If you're not already on my mailing list, if you scan that QR code, it will sign you up for my monthly newsletter. It goes out the first Wednesday of every month. And we'll give you all the Instagram updates, plus other big social media news updates you need to know, as well as full of resources that will help you, especially as a real estate agent. So if you're interested in that, scan that QR code and sign up for the newsletter. Again, it's going to be a double opt-in, GDPR and all those fun things. And if you already signed up for the Reels guide, you're already on the newsletter. Sorry, but you can opt out at any point if you don't want to stay on that newsletter list. All right, so I'm going to leave this up here on the slides for just a moment while I open up. We've got the Q&A open over here, and then I've got the chat open over here as well. So I'm going to pull these up and go through some of these for our last few minutes together. So Dedra had posted in the Q&A and said, as a new agent, how do I ease into including personal content? Since I created my Instagram a few months ago, I've only posted real estate content. I feel weird about adding personal content now. Great question, Dedra. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing the screen because I want you all to be able to see my face as I answer these questions. So you can start by peppering it in. It doesn't have to be that you have like tons of personal content all the time. You may do one a week. Maybe it's just a weekend post. You do a weekend recap, or maybe you share your personal opinion on something, or maybe you go to the beach this weekend and you just, post something about being at the beach. It's just a little bit of a personal glimpse as you start to tiptoe into sharing personal content. Stories are a great way to tiptoe into it, right? Because again, it disappears after 24 hours. So it's a great way to start mixing in and just seeing kind of what resonates with your audience. The great thing, Dedra, is that you are new. Like, you don't have a precedent of years and years of people expecting you to do a certain thing, and now you're trying to rebrand or go through a change. Now's a perfect time to start to introduce these things. So all the different things that we talked about, find little moments here and there where you can include that content in your strategy. And again, it doesn't have to be over the top. It doesn't have to be massively, behind the scenes of your personal life. It could be something as simple even as if you're getting ready for an open house, and you're like, what shoes do I wear today? Like, am I going to wear the sneakers? Am I going to wear the heels? Am I going to wear the loafers? Like, that could be your personal content, just deciding on what pair of shoes to wear. But it's still work related as you get ready for that open house. So play with all those different ideas, look around at some of the other people in the industry that, whether it's locally, within the agency you work for, any of that sort of stuff, to get some of those ideas as well. All right, so we have a few other things I think that are in here. No, it looks like I got them all. So Elsie has those links in the chat for the slides. If you didn't already grab those slides, make sure you grab those. If you have any other last minute questions here, we've got a minute. a minute or two. If you have one more question, feel free to drop those in, and I'd be happy to answer that before we wrap up. And as I wait to see if anything pops in, I just want to thank you again for hanging out with me today. I always love these sessions here for my Orange County Realtors. And we're going to be back next week. We have another session next week, which will be on the common Instagram mistakes to avoid as a realtor. So we're going to go through some of the things that people tend to do wrong on Instagram and talk about what you should be doing to do it right, what you should do instead. So I hope that if you're not signed up for that session yet, that you will sign up for it and that you'll join me next week for that session as well. It'll be great. We're going to dive into some of the things like AI and using AI incorrectly. So there's some fun things we're going to talk about in that session next week. I hope that you'll join me for that. And oh, perfect. Elsie just dropped that link in there so that you can grab that link to register for next week's event if you're not already registered. And if you have any questions after this, if you think of something, always reach out to me on Instagram. And hey, if you took a photo at all during today's session and want to share that on Instagram, make sure to tag me at JENNS_trends. And thank you again for hanging out with me today. I will see all of you next week for those 4 common Instagram mistakes to avoid as a realtor. Thanks so much, everybody. Bye-bye.